He was the quiet one, the son who never spoke up while the family fell apart on camera. But 3 days ago, that silence reportedly ended with a police log, a missing RV, and questions about a $1 million land sale that no one can answer. This is not gossip. This is a timeline. And once you see how it lines up, you will not see the Brown family the same way again. So before we break down what allegedly happened and why this moment changes everything, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because stories like this do not break twice, and you do not want to hear about it last. He was always present, but never centered. The quiet figure who sat just outside the frame while arguments echoed across backyards, couches, and confessionals. Dayton Brown existed in the margins of a family that thrived on volume and performance. And for nearly a decade, that silence allowed him to remain unseen, unheard, and underestimated. Until now, because according to publicly discussed timelines, circulating reports, and observable behavior, that silence appears to have ended. And the shift is not emotional, it is structural. This is not about feelings, but about facts, records, ownership, and accountability. And the moment Dayton allegedly began asking questions, the entire foundation of the Brown family story started to tremble. Viewers remember Dayton as the calm one, the artistic one, the son who rarely contradicted authority and who seemed content staying out of conflict while siblings clashed openly. But silence does not equal ignorance, and distance does not mean disengagement, because those who observe quietly often understand systems more clearly than those who dominate them. And Dayton spent years watching the way money moved, the way decisions were justified, and the way loyalty was rewarded or withdrawn. And when the land known as Coyote Pass finally sold earlier this year, after years of anticipation, delays, and shifting narratives, it created a moment of reckoning that could no longer be ignored. Because money crystallizes truth in a way words never can. And when a reported 7-figure transaction closes, questions inevitably follow, especially from someone who may have had a personal financial stake tied to the earliest stages of that land acquisition. Insiders and longtime followers recall the ATV accident years ago, the injury, the settlement, and the repeated assurances that the funds were meant to protect Dayton's future, medical stability, and independence. But whispers persisted that the settlement was not isolated, that it was blended into family finances under the belief that it would be returned once investments matured. Whether that understanding was formal, documented, or simply assumed remains unclear. But assumptions do not survive liquidation, and when the land finally sold, those assumptions transformed into questions, and those questions demanded answers. According to multiple overlapping reports, Dayton approached his father not with accusations, but with requests for clarity, documentation, and explanation about where funds had moved and what portion, if any, remained allocated to him. This moment is critical because it reframes everything that followed, not as rebellion, but as due diligence, not as disrespect, but as inquiry. And systems built on opacity do not tolerate inquiry well, because inquiry exposes contradictions. And when those contradictions cannot be resolved through explanation, they are often met with control. And that control allegedly manifested in restrictions, access, removal, and escalation rather than transparency. Because shortly after these questions surfaced, public records referenced a civil dispute involving property removal. And while no names were officially released, the timing, location, and context aligned too closely to ignore, especially as online observers noticed that Dayton was no longer visible at the property, and that a recreational vehicle, long rumored to be his residence, was allegedly removed under official supervision. This is not framed as eviction, but as separation enforced through authority, and authority exercised when narrative control begins to slip. And what followed only intensified speculation, because silence from the household was paired with sudden sightings elsewhere. Images, discussions, and quiet meetings that suggested Dayton was no longer isolated, but aligning with individuals who understood finance, law, and documentation. People who had long expressed concern about how assets were handled, and who themselves felt excluded from the final distribution of shared investments. And this alignment, whether casual or strategic, carries symbolic weight, because it suggests that Dayton is no longer operating from within the protected bubble, but from outside it, where questions are not discouraged, but sharpened. And once that boundary is crossed, the dynamic changes permanently because loyalty-based systems rely on internal resolution, while accountability-based systems invite external review. And review requires records, and records tell stories that cannot be edited by production teams or softened by confessionals. And this is where the tension escalates, because shortly after the alleged dispute, reports surfaced of legal correspondence, warnings against public discussion, and attempts to contain narrative flow. Again, none of these documents have been officially confirmed, but the consistency of reports across platforms suggests a coordinated response rather than coincidence. And coordinated responses are rarely deployed against silence. They are deployed against disclosure. And that distinction matters because it indicates fear, not of gossip, but of verification. And when verification looms, systems that thrived on ambiguity begin to unravel. Behavior changes, assets move, and relationships fracture under pressure, because the truth does not need volume. It needs patience, and patience appears to be the strategy now employed by the quiet observer, who once stayed invisible, but who now may hold the most leverage of anyone involved, because he was present during the endgame. He witnessed the final transactions, the frantic adjustments, and the rationalizations that accompanied them. And unlike others who exited earlier, Dayton remained until the last moment, which means his perspective is not based on memory, but proximity. And proximity matters in disputes grounded in timing, access, and intent. And as the audience watches this unfold, the suspense does not come from outbursts or dramatic confrontations, but from absence, from what is no longer shown, from what is no longer said, and from the knowledge that if any formal agreements existed, even informally acknowledged ones, they will surface eventually, because disputes involving shared funds do not resolve through silence, they resolve through accounting. And accounting does not care about hierarchy, charisma, or narrative control. It cares about numbers and trails, and the longer those trails remain hidden, the more valuable they become to those who seek them. And this is why the quiet departure of Dayton from the property marks a turning point, not because he left, but because he left with questions unresolved, and those questions now exist outside the family structure, where answers are no longer optional. And that is the moment when a family story becomes a financial one. And financial stories do not end with reconciliation, they end with resolution. And resolution demands truth, whether spoken softly or revealed through documents, and the quiet observer understands this better than anyone. And that understanding is what makes the next phase unavoidable. As the situation continues to unfold, what makes this chapter even more compelling is not what is being shouted publicly, but what is unfolding quietly behind the scenes. Because when long-standing systems begin to fail, the first signs are rarely explosive. They are subtle shifts, behavior changes, sudden silences, and movements that only make sense in hindsight. And Dayton Brown appears to be at the center of that shift, not as a provocateur, but as a catalyst, someone whose simple request for clarity may have triggered consequences far larger than anyone anticipated. Because families that intertwine personal relationships with shared finances often operate on trust rather than structure. And trust works only until the moment someone asks for proof. And once that moment arrives, everything changes. The narrative that once relied on unity, sacrifice, and shared vision now must withstand scrutiny, timelines, and documentation. And scrutiny does not negotiate, it reveals. Which is why observers have noticed a pattern emerging after the land sale confirmations surfaced earlier this year. First, there was optimism. Then there was delay. Then silence, and finally fragmentation, because when money moves without explanation, people begin to fill the gaps with questions, and when those questions go unanswered, suspicion grows, especially for someone like Dayton, who had reason to believe his future security was tied to those very assets. Viewers often underestimate the role he played within the household, because quiet does not mean disengaged, and proximity matters. Dayton lived within the environment during the final years. He saw decisions made in real time. He witnessed stress responses, spending patterns, and reactions to declining external income streams. And this matters because context gives meaning to numbers, and numbers alone never tell the full story. But when combined with lived experience, they form a narrative that cannot easily be dismissed. This is why his perspective carries weight, because unlike others who left earlier, he remained through the final act, and final acts reveal truths that beginnings often hide. This brings us to the alleged escalation after Dayton reportedly requested clarification about fund allocation, because according to multiple aligned reports, the response was not transparency, but restriction, not explanation, but authority exercised through property control and separation. And whether this was intentional or reactive, the result was the same. Dayton was physically removed from the environment that once shielded information, and that removal created distance, and distance creates independence. And independence allows reflection and strategy, especially when combined with support from individuals who understand financial systems and who have themselves questioned how assets were managed and distributed over time. The appearance of Dayton in the company of family members once considered outside the inner circle was not just symbolic, it was strategic, because it suggested a shift from internal resolution to external understanding. And once that shift occurs, the outcome becomes less about reconciliation and more about clarity. Because when multiple parties feel excluded from shared outcomes, alliances form naturally, not out of spite, but out of necessity. And necessity reshapes loyalty. This is why the reported legal warnings that followed carry such significance. Because attempts to limit speech rarely arise in environments of confidence. They arise when narratives are vulnerable. And again, no official documents have been released publicly, but the repetition of similar accounts across independent spaces suggests coordination rather than coincidence. And coordination indicates concern about information flow, not about emotion, but about exposure. And exposure is the natural consequence of blurred boundaries between personal and business finances. Because once assets are commingled, intent becomes relevant, and intent must be justified when challenged, and justifying intent requires evidence, not authority. This is where suspense deepens, because the public does not yet know what documentation exists, what agreements were made, or what expectations were set, verbally or otherwise. But what is clear is that Dayton now occupies a unique position. He is neither an outsider speculating nor an early exit speaking from distance. He is an insider who remained until the conclusion and then left abruptly. And insiders who leave suddenly often do so because they have seen enough. And what they carry with them is not rumor, but memory, context, and access. And those elements combined can reshape entire narratives without a single public statement. It means preparation. And preparation suggests that the next chapter will not be emotional, it will be procedural. And procedures move slowly, but they move decisively. And once initiated, they cannot be undone, only completed. And completion brings answers that no amount of narrative control can suppress. And that is why this moment feels different, because it is not fueled by reaction, but by inevitability. And inevitability does not care who tells the story. It only cares that the story ends with truth, grounded in record, not rhetoric. And the quiet observer understands this better than anyone. And that understanding is what makes the next development unavoidable. This story is no longer about noise. It is about records, timelines, and accountability. And once those doors open, they never fully close. If the quietest person in the room finally decided to ask for answers, the ripple effect will be impossible to contain. So, if you want to stay ahead of what happens next, subscribe, turn on notifications, and keep your eyes right here. Because when the truth surfaces, it will not whisper. It will rewrite everything.